He was a doctor of medicine, and that's what he was doing, was practicing medicine, and it didn't matter who and what and why. He was doing it because he think of one human being just as much as another one. He's just an honest man, and that's something we need now in this day and time. It's a lot of politics and no honesty. When you have honesty, well, people will try to do anything to blot you out. And that's what they will try to do to him, is blot him out, because he will be honest. And they need more like him.
Click here to donate to help get James' story broadcast on television.
We're back. It's INFOWARS Nightly News, and it's the big caucus night, obviously. They're in Iowa, and we're going to have all the full results and analysis for you tomorrow. We're going to have the expert on electronic voting machine fraud, Bev Harris, joining us on the radio tomorrow, and then later in the week back here on INFOWARS Nightly News. But I wanted to invite a guest from the radio show here on the Nightly News, Timothy Baldwin. Tim Baldwin is a constitutional lawyer. He heads up Liberty Defense League that does a lot of great work. He's also an author. And his father is a prominent fighter for liberty. Of course, that's Chuck Baldwin, the presidential candidate from 2008 for the Constitution Party. And he joins us from Montana to give us his take on what's happening this political season. And obviously the stakes are higher than they've ever been before to defeat this globalist takeover. And there's an awakening bigger than anything I've ever seen happening. But I want to get his view from Montana on that as well, Ron Paul, and a lot more. Tim, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, you heard my intro. What type of awakening are you seeing? Are you seeing the same explosive awakening that I'm witnessing?
Well, I think it's many parts, actually, Alex. I think there's an explosive awakening to some people, and to others, I think it's a progressive awakening. Either one of them is good. They both should lead to the same result, and that is there's in our country from the top down.
You're right. I mean, everybody I talk to, whether it's Ron Paul or your dad, I mean, anybody, they're seeing people finally get it. Why do you think the awakening is accelerating?
I think it sort of goes to this self-preservation, self-defense kind of a mechanism in our nature, and that is when we start to see things around us that are causing our stability to be challenged, the predictability of the future to be questioned. Those types of factors are in play here because of the economy, because of the success we've seen them for so many years. People are starting to question the system as a whole. And so they're looking around them, they're looking at leaders like Ron Paul, and they're listening to what they're saying and saying, that makes sense. So they start to research, they start to study, they start to listen to their friends or family who are saying these things, and their minds are convinced. So I think it's just a natural progress.
Record gun sales in the month of December, over 1.5 million background checks, and that's only people buying from registered gun dealers. They estimate the average person was buying a little more than 2 firearms, so that's over 3 million guns. An all-time record. The accelerated sales are just continuing. And I saw some surveys of people why they were buying guns, and the number one reason was collapse of the government, collapse of society, and not trusting the government, civil unrest. I mean, that's a strong vote right there of no confidence for this puppet government.
I think it's been going that way for many years, and some people would claim that is silly talk. It's paranoia. But when you have such a large consensus about what's going on from people who really have no personal agenda, people who are business people or professionals or whatever status they might be, they're looking at this from a very objective point of view, and they don't see stability. They see that there's potentially some very troubling times ahead of us. And of course, that self-defense mechanism that we talked about earlier, we have to protect ourselves as individuals, protecting our families. And so it's no wonder people are loading their shelves with food and stocking ammunition and those types of things. They're scared.
Well, when you look at the type of globalists we have running our society, that is a reason to be concerned. I mean, these are anti-family, anti-sovereignty, anti-free market, crony capitalists who want to overthrow our system and bring in a post-industrial world. As a constitutional lawyer, but also talking to your dad, what is your view on why they passed the NDAA, why the system, the tyrants are really more and more coming out of the closet, admitting that they want to have internet censorship, a selective kill switch? I mean, they are really doing our job for us now. I mean, the stuff we talk about a decade ago and get laughed at for, it's now all happening. And the system isn't even trying to hide it a lot now.
Well, it's the boiling frog analogy. You know, typically, you know, people who have of sorts, they are not going to lay their agenda out all at one time. They're just, that would be foolish of them to do that. It would raise too many flags. The people would become alarmed. And so they do it incrementally. That's what they've been doing for many years. And so it's just one brick on top of the other. The NDAA is just another brick. If not, it's a cement that holds the brick together. And it is a bill that a lot of people, or it's actually a law now since Obama signed it, that people are very concerned about. It does, in fact, admit or acknowledge or recognize the president as having power to arrest U.S. citizens without judicial warrant, without probable cause, without any judicial review whatsoever, and they could be held under the laws of war. That is a very dangerous place to be in if you're supposed to be living under a constitutional system of government.
Well, you're right. And then it's got all the other provisions about declaring the world a battlefield and then transferring that power to the president. That's really a transfer of a lot of the war powers. Expanding on that, you know, talking to people there in your area of the world and to folks that visit your different websites, what is the sense of the population? I mean, from my perspective, they think the establishment's just going to go forward, the tyranny's only going to get worse, and that a big confrontation's coming. What's your view?
You know, it's hard to say if that's going to happen or not. I know there are a lot of us, including yourself and people who are, trying to educate people who hope for political resolution. We hope for, resolution through the political and democratic process within a constitutional republic form of government. And we're doing everything we can to lay out the issues, to lay out the calls, the call to action, trying to get people to understand where we are, why things are happening the way they are. And that's one of the reasons why so many other people are waking up to what's going on around us. I think that with the number of people that are awake in 2012, the powers that be would be very foolish to try to force certain things down our throats without consent, because the repercussions would be too devastating for their agenda, and because they're accomplishing so much as it is without that sort of force. So I think they're going to continue to do that. But as long as the people become awake and aware of what's going on, they're going to have a difficult time of doing this through political means.
Well, you're right. I mean, that's one reason Obama said he would veto the bill, then signed it, then said, well, it does affect citizens, but don't worry, I won't implement it. They don't want to do things completely in the open because it helps us then form a larger and larger political movement that's really awake to what's happening. Watching Congressman Ron Paul and the different dirty tricks they're running, they're not working as well as they did in the past. So now I'm expecting to see more election fraud. I know the campaign doesn't like to talk about that because they've made the calculation that then it makes people think, well, why vote? They'll just cheat it anyways. But we are seeing some evidence of that going on. Overall, what do you think about this Ron Paul phenomenon?
Well, he is a movement. Ron Paul is iconic in so many ways because he cuts across the board of party labels, across the board of schools of thought. He attracts so many different Americans because he stands for this idea of individual liberty, reducing the power of government from the elitist mentality, putting it back into the states, putting it back to the individual where it belongs. And people are very much attracted to that. His movement is one that will not die, Alex. Even if he doesn't get elected or nominated or elected as president, his movement that he started through much of what he's done in Congress will continue with people like you and me and the people that we are able to influence. So, you know, it's like a Star Wars episode where Obi-Wan Kenobi, if he perishes, then Luke Skywalker will take the baton and go forward. And that's what's happening right now.
Well, we've got sources inside Bilderberg, and going back even to 2006, they're very upset about Ron Paul. And back then, it wasn't because they thought he could even win. It was the fact that the youth aren't getting into fake neocon, warmongering, police state, fake conservatism, and they're not getting into the liberal communism. They're actually getting into Americana constitutionalism. And then by the last time we got intel on this was 2010, they are freaking out about Ron Paul as a focal point. And as you said, as Ron Paul has said, he is just that, a focal point, and he's using this as a way to educate people. He could win, but even if he doesn't win, we win by being involved. I mean, Ron Paul 15 years ago in Congress couldn't get one co-sponsored audit the Fed. Last year, 2011, it passed the House. They procedurally killed it in the Senate and watered it down. But still, we've got to look at this in the balance of decades, not in days or weeks or months. We are having huge positive effects right now, exponentially. My concern is, how will the globalists that have taken control through fractional reserve banking, through giant global Ponzi schemes, how are they going to strike back? Tim Baldwin, what's your view on that?
Well, they're going to try every method they can. You know, retaining power sometimes can be a very difficult thing when the structure itself is starting to shake and starting to tremble. You know, if you look around us, especially with the state sovereignty movement, you have people who are focusing now on using the states to restore freedom, and I've been a big part of that as well. And it is, in fact, a key focal of the issues at hand. If the global bankers cannot control the banking system, the economic and financial system, then back into the hands of the people through their state governments, and the influence that over the entire country and then the entire world seriously undermined. And so you have people like Chuck Baldwin, who's running as lieutenant governor of Montana, along with Bob Fanning, who is the governor candidate for Montana. They are strongly advocating that Montana have a state bank that will that the central banking system has created over the years, giving the people of Montana a financial future in prosperity and independence.
That's right, taking the money power away from offshore mega banks who then hand themselves government authority and actually having it under the state government as the Constitution states, or the federal government, expanding on that. Now, the system is really scared of the states' rights movement. That's why the globalists staged the Oklahoma City bombing, was because of a huge states' rights movement centered around Oklahoma City that was growing across the country at the time. Get us out of the UN, get back to American values, true constitutional conservatism. And so that was staged as the film A Noble Lie exposes to be blamed on the liberty movement in this country. But here we are 15, 16, 17 years later. That same old demonization isn't working anymore. And there's this attempt to say there are no states' rights. Well, why until the 17th